Welcome to Practical Business Technology, where we keep you in the know about technology's impact on business. Today's show is sponsored by the Maricopa County Bar Association, and our host is Dave Kinsey, author and owner of Total Networks. Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're going to talk about phishing in 2022. Anything new or
how to keep yourself from being phished, right? You don't want to get reeled in by those fishers.
Right. I mean, we've talked about phishing for years, and yet there's still new things to learn.
Some things stay the same in the fact that phishing, once again, this is Phishing. It's not fishing like going out to catch a trout or a tuna, you're going deep sea fishing. It's being avoid people trying to fake you. You know, but it is like phishing, right? Where they're basically throwing out a line via email, trying to get trying to somebody take their bait to get them to
trying to get you to bite.
Trying to get somebody to bite, and it is still the number one way that bad actors succeed in infiltrating organizations. It's the number one way ransomware gets transmitted. It's the number one way just bad actors in general.
So maybe we should just start with the basics. How does a typical phishing email come in?
It will come in via your email
so
or
you
Outlook.
Get an
email.
email.
You get an email in your Outlook, and it will. There's certain things that sort of are characteristic of phishing emails. Number one, they want you to do something. It's not just informational, right? They want you to click, and to help induce you to click, they will convey a sense of urgency.
For example, you might get an email that says, "We've seen some unusual activity on your account. Click here to reset your password."
Or you
it might look like it's coming from your bank, and you need to approve a transaction.
Yeah.
Or deny a transaction.
It might tell you about this $100,000 payment that was just approved.
It might be an invoice that you have to pay. Or we're going to disconnect your service if you don't pay immediately because it's past due.
Yeah. So they generally...
So often it's trying to get you to log in to a website. And when you get to that page, it looks like the real website.
It absolutely can.
So if, say it's with a bank, it would look just like the bank if you're not carefully inspecting it, or whichever site it is.
Yeah, if they're doing, there's various levels of how good fishers are, but they continually get better, and it can be very hard to distinguish good from bad, from legit from illegitimate. And to that end, one of the things that sort of prompted this as a discussion here was that, about a week ago, I read an article saying that Microsoft is the number one impersonated, thank you, number one impersonated brand used by phishing companies in the first half of 2022. This is not a shock. Basically, when bad actors want you to do something, they're trying to not only kind of scare you and get you a sense of urgency, they want you to trust them. And so it's a brand that is trusted is Microsoft. You may get communication from Microsoft. You may be using Office 365. You're used to interacting with the brand. You're used to clicking on Microsoft things, and so it will pretend to be coming from Microsoft. And I read this article, and I was like, this is not a shock. And then the very next day, literally the next day, there was an email that made it through my spam filtering that purported to be from Microsoft, and it clearly was not.
I've seen a couple as well, and they have the color scheme and the font and everything. It looks just like it came from Microsoft.
It does, and it's unfortunate that the bad actors can be quite good, and it's unfortunate that as good as spam filtering is, and it's quite good. The problem is, for you to never see these things, the spam filter has to be 100% accurate. Basically, it can't. People don't want accidentally things going into their quarantine that's legitimate, because that's very frustrating to people. And then you don't want also the things that shouldn't slip through to slip through. and the bad actors try and try and try. They can automate trying this 1,000 times. 800 times out of the 1,000, it may get completely thrown away by the spam filter and see, you know what, I'm not even going to put it in my quarantine. I can tell it's that bad. And then there'll be a bunch that it'll put in the quarantine, and then there might be 2 or 3 out of 1,000, whatever, that slip through, and you get them. So that's really number one feedback in 2022 is continue to be diligent on looking at emails coming through and expect things from Microsoft and other trusted brands, FedEx, you know, people where you expect to see shipments from, or UPS, or Amazon, or what have you. Facebook has historically also been a brand that's been abused a lot by phishers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
so
number
if
one.
you're not expecting the message, that's one clue. If you think it might be real, but you just aren't sure, we can talk about a few tactics.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can see who the sender was, and the sender, if you read it carefully, isn't really who it says it is.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a Gmail address, it might have an extra character in there,
Yep.
it might be spelled wrong.
I mean, like the from in a message.
Correct.
Very much so, because you know there's limits to the security of email, but one of the things that has evolved over time and certainly in systems we set up, we use some authentication so that people can't just fake out and pretend to be from Microsoft. There will be only certain what's called IP. People familiar with IP addresses nowadays, right? It's your address on the internet. There will be certain IP addresses that maybe that Microsoft's allowed to send from, and it will check that out. So, like in this particular thing, they would not have been able to successfully get through to me saying that this came from something at Microsoft.com because the email filtering would have stopped it. So that's why they didn't. That's why it wasn't saying it was from Microsoft. That would have been stopped because it said it was some other. It said some portal system from. In this case, this one happened to say it was coming from a university. I've seen others where it'll say it'll come from other companies or Gmail.
I've seen several emails from a Gmail address. And the
Gmail's-
thing about
Gmail's
Gmail
tricky.
is they can make a million gazillion different variations of email addresses.
Yeah.
So, you
Well,
might block one and then they just make another.
Yeah.
Right. So check who the sender is, who the from is.
That's an important one.
Another thing is if it has a button where it wants you to click, hover over it.
Now, in some systems you'll be able to look at that in some they may do some URL rewriting for extra protection, which may make it that's a complicated thing. You may or may not be able to tell by the mouse over, depending on what your email filtering is doing to that.
The other thing that you might notice is it might have poor grammar.
It may, but obviously very good. It's you'll see.
That's not
It's not as common. You will see more people that are actually trying to. The quality has gone up on. The quality has improved on phishing emails.
Yes, you can't just count on it.
You cannot count on bad grammar, but the from is a good one. You want to look and see just how reasonable is the message, and like you said earlier, are you expecting this?
Right. Well, I mean, for example, Terry, my accounting assistant, a few days ago said, "Hey, I got this message asking for this payment, but we don't have this vendor. This isn't legitimate, right?" So, yes, if you get a message from a vendor that's not a vendor that you use, well, then that's a good sign. Well, what if you get one from a vendor that is your vendor? Well, if you have a way to log in separate from the email,
I agree.
Say it came from Amazon. Well, log into your Amazon account. Don't click on it from the email. Go to the website directly, and then you can investigate.
Yeah, so those are things. And I will say, obviously, you want to have tremendous technical defenses, tremendous technical controls, which we do, which is built on layer upon layer upon layer. Everything from making sure that your system is patched and up to date. You've got good email filtering in place. You've got good antivirus endpoint protection. And we take it beyond. For us, we take it beyond endpoint protection. We actually use very high-end protection nowadays called SOC and SIM services, where, among other things, it does many things, but among other things, there are actual human beings that are looking at activity that our systems are reporting back and looking for signs of suspicious activity. Not necessarily compromise, but that somebody's trying to compromise. Multi-factor authentication for your logins. It's just, layer and layer and layer and layer to make it really hard. But then the final layer, or, one of the most final layers, is training.
Yes, because at the end of the day, it's the human being that is going to take the bite, to get caught, to get tricked. And so if we train the human beings to not get tricked, that's our best defense.
Yeah, because why does phishing work?
It works because someone gets tricked.
There's always somebody that's willing to click, right? There's always somebody willing to click. No matter how well you train people, there's going to be somebody out there. So, but it's a numbers game. So what you want to do is, hire very well, right? Train very well. And the better you train people to look out for this, you're going to greatly improve your odds.
Right. Well, and kind of related to phishing is phone calls.
Sure.
I got a phone call this week. They called me 2 days in a row saying that I had a $1,100 laptop order that needed to get approved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I don't think Amazon makes phone calls like that. So I just hung up. But that's something, if they're calling you on the phone, it's not going to have a spam filter or SOCSIM or all that stuff. It's literally a person calling a person. And so the training goes beyond just what you might think happens within your computers.
Yeah, there's actually a term for that related to phishing. It's called phishing.
Yeah, phishing, voice phishing.
Voice phishing. There's like SMS, text messaging. It's like called smishing, I think, whatever they've come up with that. So we have all these layers of security. We have the training, and the best way to training, the most effective way we find to training, is to have simulated phishing email campaigns. So that's where you pretend to be devious. You pretend to be a bad actor, but for good. You end up sending campaign emails out to your people on a regular basis, say once a month, where you're phishing. You want to find one of your employees that's going to be that person to click on the message, and then generally they'll be asked for credentials and whatever. You want somebody to go through all that and then automatically get trained. The system detect and say, you've been fooled.
Had this been a real one, bad things would have happened. This is why we train you. And then you want to be able to look at reports of that. And generally, we've been doing that for quite some time, where we've been have most of our clients on board with these phishing campaigns. And it really changes the game. What I find is the first month we do this, there's quite a few people that fall for it. The second month, not so much. By the third month, there really shouldn't be anybody. Maybe a new hire comes in. If there is somebody still falling by the third or fourth month, that's a one-on-one conversation with that person of, we got to treat this for real. And that's pretty rare. Or give them more extensive training.
Yeah, you're giving them more extensive training. Yeah, so this is an important thing for every business to be aware of. There are bad things that happen. The worst case, you can have like a ransomware attack be successful. Hopefully you've got defenses to prevent it, but this is the number one way that happens. You could have people spamming your clients, which could be very disruptive, like managing to get access to your email system and sending emails as you, and that can be extremely disruptive and bad for your reputation.
Or you could lose money because someone paid a bill that wasn't a real bill.
And that's absolutely a thing to always be looking out for, is especially things like wire transfers. Look out for that next message you get from Microsoft.
It probably isn't for Microsoft.
It probably isn't for Microsoft. It probably is. Maybe it is, but but check it out.
Verify.
Maybe it's not.
Verify.
Yeah, verify. Go a separate way.
So really, the lesson for 2022 is that phishing still happens.
It still works.
It still works, and so you still have to be on guard.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.